Morse. Round of applause. We drew lots, and Senator Ayotte will begin with her 2-minute opening remarks.
Thank you. I want to thank the New Hampshire Journal for having this debate tonight. I'm running for governor because I fear that we are one election away from becoming Massachusetts, from becoming something that we are not. Joe and I were both born in New Hampshire. We raised our children here. We love this state. New Hampshire is exceptional. And over the last 8 years, we've been in a very strong position under Governor Sununu. But the Democrats want to take us down a very different path, one of higher taxes and less freedom. I won't let that happen. I have to tell you, the Democrats never talk about my Republican opponent because they believe they could beat him easily. Yet Joyce Craig has called me the most dangerous threat that New Hampshire has ever seen. And you know what? I am a threat to their agenda. I will beat them. I will make sure that Joyce Craig never has the opportunity to do to our state what she did with her failed leadership in Manchester. As governor, I'll keep New Hampshire safe, prosperous, and free. We'll ban sanctuary cities. Illegal immigrants will not get driver's licenses or any benefits whatsoever. Fentanyl dealers and violent criminals will face the toughest sentences in the country. And we'll not only defend our New Hampshire advantage, but we're going to strengthen our tax advantage. We will remain the beacon for freedom. As your governor, I will defend your constitutional rights, including your Second Amendment rights. We will pass a parent bill of rights, and we will pass universal education freedom so that every child reaches his or her full potential. Live free or die is more than words on a license plate. It's a way of life. I have what it takes to beat the Democrats and make sure that they do not mass up our great state.
Senator Chuck Morse.
Well, thank you. I'm Chuck Morse, and I'm running for governor because I believe New Hampshire's best days lie ahead. As Senate President, I always worked for results for the people of New Hampshire. We are the freest state in the nation. We have the lowest poverty rate in the nation, and we have the best taxpayer return on investment. And our economy is strong. It's the envy of the Northeast and the nation. But we haven't gone this far to only go this far. As governor, I will make sure we keep our economy strong and we provide opportunity for everyone. And we keep our state safe. We close our northern borders to illegals. We close our southern borders to drugs. And we make sure we strengthen parental rights. But there couldn't be a starker difference between the two candidates that are running. Kelly Ayotte went to Washington and voted with the Democrats over 260 times. She voted to grant amnesty to 11 million illegal immigrants, and she voted against school choice for low-income families. And in 2016, she couldn't support our nominee for president, Donald Trump. I'm going to run on my conservative values and my record. I'm going to balance the budget. I'm going to ban sanctuary cities. I'm going to make sure that we treat fentanyl dealers like the murderers they are. And I'm going to strengthen parental rights because I want to make sure the American dream is alive here in New Hampshire.
Thank you, Senator Morse. Now, under the rules, we're going to have a minute each for these questions and then a chance to rebut. Normally, when someone says the other candidate's name, we rebut on the spot. I promise everybody's going to have time, but let's get the debate started, and we can address these issues as we go. And I want to start, and one of the things that people who are watching will notice, you're not going to hear a lot of questions about general election issues. This is a primary for Republican primary voters. If we had Cindy Warmington and Joyce Craig on stage, we'd be asking about Democratic primary voters. And one thing that Republicans to New Hampshire tell NH Journal regularly is, we're concerned about the strength of our party. We think we're going the wrong direction. We're losing ground, not gaining ground. And so we'll start the first question with you, Senator Ayotte. With when once reliably red towns like Bedford now turning blue, with the state seeming to drift towards perhaps Massachusetts politics, why are you the right candidate on this stage to defend and revive Republican ideas and strengthen the party?
I'm the right candidate because I have the vision for this state to keep New Hampshire safe, prosperous, and free. And I'm also the right candidate because I can beat the Democrats. It's not an accident that you've seen them already spending millions of dollars on television against me, because they know that I'm a threat. They know that I can beat them, that I'll bring people together, that I can also rally Republicans and independents, which is what we need to do to succeed in the general election, and make sure that they understand what we have here is worth fighting for. We can't go the way of Massachusetts. We need to protect our New Hampshire tax advantage and let people know what that value is to them with what they pay for every day. You think about the rising costs right now, we can't put taxes back on them. The Democrats have a very different vision. Energy costs, making sure that we reduce energy costs, not adding more like the Democrats would want to do. So I think we need to talk to them about our positive vision, and also, having been an attorney general, what we need to do to keep this state safe. Because I feel like the model the Democrats are pushing, whether it's sanctuary cities or whether it's the bail reform law where we're coddling criminals, that's not what average people want. They want to keep their families safe. And I can present that vision to them and bring people together to succeed in November.
Well, as Senate President, I always work to build a strong economy in our state. But let's understand how we got there. In the 2016 budget, we built a budget that cut taxes and worked on mental health and brought Republicans together. And we passed a budget that we delivered to Senator Hassan, Governor Hassan at the time. And Governor Hassan vetoed that budget. And I united the Republican Party and some of the Democrats. And we overrode Governor Hassan's veto in September of that year. And unlike my opponent, she went against Donald Trump. She couldn't support him in November. And we lost a U.S. Senate seat for 12 years.
30 seconds to rebut.
You know, I find it ironic that this is from someone who couldn't even get out of a statewide primary, never mind win a statewide election. And if we want to succeed in this race, we need people who know how to win and how to beat the Democrats. And I've done that, and I'm going to do that again. And by the way, I'm the only one on this stage that President Trump administration actually asked to work for them to help him with his first Supreme Court justice, and I was proud to do that.
One more response? Or good?
We're good.
Okay, great.
Okay. Moving on, illegal immigration, as we know, a hot topic, particularly since Massachusetts is now dealing with the costs and crimes from their massive inflow. You both say you oppose sanctuary cities and support border security. Two questions. What policies can New Hampshire pursue to address this problem, and why would you be the best governor to pursue them? We'll go to Senator Morse.
Yeah, and I believe New Hampshire needs to do this from day one. We need to stop the drugs from coming into our state. We need to stop the illegals from coming into our state. And what I did to make that happen, I went out and endorsed President Trump. I went out and endorsed him because I believe the solution to help the New Hampshire governor is to make sure we close that southern border, make sure we stop the drugs, stop the illegals from coming into our country. I think that's important to make sure that a governor in New Hampshire can close that northern border and start working with the people in the northern part of the state to have a prosperous economy up there. That's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to make sure that it's not happening in Lawrence, Massachusetts, that the drugs are coming across the border. It's coming across the border in Texas. And that's why I said we need to get President Trump to work with New Hampshire and stop this. I even went there and saw it happening, and I went to the North Country and saw it happening there.
First of all, I'm a former murder prosecutor. I'm a former attorney general, and I know how to enforce the law. That's why I have the support of so many law enforcement agencies throughout the state. I'm going to bring that attitude to the governor's office, and that's why I said we'll make sure that fentanyl dealers face the toughest penalties in the country, because right now they're not in New Hampshire. We also can't continue this flawed bail experiment that Chuck Morse voted for that has allowed a revolving door of criminals on our streets. But when it comes to illegal immigration, sanctuary cities, no way, no how, but also no benefits for illegal immigrants. That's a problem because Massachusetts has spent $1 billion of taxpayer monies, giving housing, giving benefits, no driver's licenses, and our DMV says there's no driver's licenses. Now we need to audit that and make sure that's not happening in the state of New Hampshire. So I'm going to bring my experience as a prosecutor and make sure this state remains safe. I'm proud on the northern border to have been there. I'll work with our law enforcement officers there to secure it. I have the support of the Coos County Commissioners and every single Republican representative in Coos County. They know I'll get it done.
Senator Morse, she invoked your record. You have 30 seconds.
Bill reform was a mistake. As governor, I'll fix it. I'll make sure we don't have a revolving approach to bill reform in New Hampshire. And as Governor Sununu admitted, he was sold a bill of goods on bill reform. I believe we need to fix it. I believe we need to make sure that we treat the drug dealers in this state like the murderers they are.
Okay. So without a doubt, in the New Hampshire Journal polling that we've done, the number one issue for unaffiliated voters, not Republicans or Democrats, but people still trying to decide, is housing. It really, in fact, it surprised our pollster so much, he went back and did another mini sample, and because he wasn't familiar with the situation here in New Hampshire. Of course, when you talk about housing and you're a governor, you end up talking about zoning and land use, which is a local issue. So starting with you, Senator Ayotte, would you support legislation giving the state more authority to allow housing constructions in community that refuse to allow it? And if not, then what are you going to do for the families who are waiting for a place for their sons and daughters to be able to buy a home and live in New Hampshire?
There's no doubt that housing is a critical need and issue in New Hampshire. But New Hampshire is a special place in terms of the local voices of people deciding what is best for their community. And I respect that local control. But what can the state do? The state actually has a piece in this, because in order to build and develop anything in New Hampshire, you have to get approval from various state agencies, whether it's DOT, DES, Fish and Game. And they're not efficient, by the way. Projects languish there. We're going to overhaul that process. We're going to lean it out, and people are going to get an answer within 60 days. It's going to be transparent. If I hear about another driveway permit as I'm campaigning, really, it's not a good process. And we'll partner with communities on issues like infrastructure. But I'm going to respect that local decision-making, because that's a big part of what makes New Hampshire special.
Yeah, all throughout the campaign, in talking to people, housing is a key issue. But remember, that comes from having a very successful economy and a successful state. We've done that. We've driven New Hampshire into a great position. As Senate President, I worked hard to make sure that we didn't override local control. I made sure that we worked with the communities that wanted to work with us. And I really do think that what we should be doing there is making sure that we're helping with them to bring water and roads to the communities that want to build. We can make a difference in the government in New Hampshire. I did it as Senate President. But I can tell you this, Kelly, I didn't go to Washington and then leave after one term and go on corporate boards like Blackstone, which are destroying the economies in our state and every other state. And they're destroying the housing market. And they're certainly taking all their profits and giving them to the Democrat Party. Just look at the contributions while you served on their board that they're making.
Senator.
You know what, Chuck? It's pretty ironic, because you sound like a Democrat. You know, basically want to vilifying the private sector and good companies in this country. I'm proud of the work that I've done in the private sector. I'm going to bring that experience to the corner office. And I've also chaired the board for BAE Systems, our largest manufacturing employer. I know how to recruit good companies to here in New Hampshire and to work with the private sector. And so it really surprises me to see you actually denigrating the private sector. That's what I expect to hear from the left, and that's not the attitude I'm going to bring to the corner office.
Over time? Go ahead.
Okay, moving on, I would like to know, Senator Morse, who would you rather run against in the November election? Former Mayor Joyce Craig or Executive Counselor Cindy Warmington, and why?
Yeah, I'll take them both on. The reality of this race is it's not about who the Democrats are wanting to anoint to be the candidate to run for the Republican Party. It's about uniting the Republican Party. That's what this is all about. I decided to unite the Republican Party last year. I went out and endorsed Donald Trump so that I could work to make sure we unite the Republican Party in New Hampshire. I just don't see how Kelly can do that. I think that's an important part of how we get to November and win together. It builds strength in the Republican Party. And that's what I'm doing right now, and I intend to do it right through November 5th.
I can unite the Republican Party, and I look forward to doing it. In fact, I have support from, if we go back to the presidential primary, all major leaders from every presidential campaign. I'm proud to have the support of Bruce Breton, who is a co-chair of the Trump campaign. But right now, we're all united behind President Trump and J.D. Vance, because we know that if we do not get them elected in November, it'll be a disaster for our country. And we'll continue the open borders, we'll continue the safety issues we're having, we'll continue the higher prices and the lack of American energy. So it's critical that we come together, we unite. I'm the person that can do that. I'm gonna bring people together, but we also not only have to unite Republicans, but we need to bring independents on board so that we can win in November from the presidential ticket to the governor's and all the way down in the state house. And that's how we're going to make sure that New Hampshire remains safe and strong, and the country as well.
Well, since someone brought up politics, oh wait, that was us. I do have to ask you the most common question that we get about all of the Republican candidates in these primaries. And so I'm going to ask it to you the way that the New Hampshire Journal readers ask us, starting with you, Senator Ayotte. When someone asks you, so where are you with Trump? What do you tell them?
I'm supporting him, and it's really important that he and J.D. Vance get elected in November, because we cannot continue down the path that we're on. And Kamala Harris, I mean, wow. She has somehow managed to be the left of Joe Biden, which I thought was hard to do. So I'm going to be working hard to make sure that our country remains strong with President Trump succeeding, and that New Hampshire remains strong, that we win this governor's race, because make no mistake, if we lose it, this state will change in one election cycle. That's why I'm running, and I want to make sure that New Hampshire keeps the real New Hampshire advantage, and that we really are a live free or die state.
Where are you on Trump, Senator?
I voted for him in November of 2016. I voted for him in 2020, and I intend to vote for him in 2024. Understand this. Our President Trump means our borders get closed, we stop the illegals from coming into our country, we stop the drugs from coming into our country, we start to give everyone a choice on all energy in this country, which I think is important. We bring natural gas to New Hampshire, which will help drive down costs. He said he'd bring it through New York. And we start drilling for oil again and making our country safer. And you know what? Maybe they'll learn from New Hampshire and start cutting taxes like I did as Senate President, and we'll make a stronger economy nationally. But that's what we need to do.
Senator Ayotte, both of the Democrats running for governor support taxpayer-funded subsidies for electric vehicles and heat pumps. And one, Cindy Warmington, says she wants New Hampshire to be net zero by 2040, 10 years before Massachusetts said it would be. Do you believe this is the right approach? And if not, what would your energy policy be as governor?
No, I do not believe that this is the right approach. And I always think of my husband, who loves to drive a pickup truck, because basically she'd like to eliminate combustion engines here in New Hampshire with her energy plan, but it's not the right direction. In fact, she would drive up energy costs for people in this state who are already paying too much for energy. Although neither of them has actually put a cost on their plan, because if they told the people of New Hampshire what it really costs, then they would definitely lose every single voter. But I want every voter to know that in New Hampshire we need more energy. We need more energy, and that means, and we also can't add burdens to ratepayers. So some of the things that our state, surrounding states have done, whether it's on issues to address climate change, we're not going to do in New Hampshire, because we need to think of the ratepayers first. We also have to be open to new technologies like micronuclear, and making sure that, because if we're not open to new technologies, we're going to be behind on this. And can imagine if we could do that and produce our own energy, like, for example, up in Berlin, what we could do for the North Country. So I'm going to be focusing on ratepayers first.
Senator Morse?
You know, as Senate President, I focused on results. I passed a piece of legislation that said all of the above for you, the people of New Hampshire. You decide when you're building what you're going to use. We are not Massachusetts. You weren't Massachusetts under my leadership, that's for damn sure. I made sure we didn't have electric heat pumps in this state. And I think that's the way we should govern. But we also need to make the Democrats accountable for all their programs. You know, we have an offshore wind project right now here in New Hampshire that the fishermen are just looking for all of us to come to their support because no one's figured out the math on it. No one's figured out how it's going to ruin our shores and ruin the fish stock, and it's not going to do anything for green energy. Those are the things that we have to make them accountable for, and I'll do that as governor.
I want to give you each 30 seconds, and we'll start with you, Senator Morse, just to talk specifically about offshore wind and New Hampshire. You've kind of answered the question. I want to get a clear answer on these. So starting with you, your stance on offshore wind in New Hampshire.
Yeah, I think what's being proposed is wrong. This is another Washington boondoggle where they appropriate billions of dollars and they come in and they say, go ahead and do it. They have no plan. They're not going to anchor these things. They're going to daisy chain these windmills. Every 2 years, the blades have to be replaced. It's going to contaminate our ocean. It's going to ruin our fish stock. Think about what it's going to do. We're going to be flying all our fish stock into this country. How green is that? We need to work with these fishermen.
Senator Ayotte, where are you?
I mean, look what happened on Cape Cod with those blades that ripped off. This is just not a project that should go forward. First of all the taxpayer dollars that are going in it, the return makes absolutely no sense. But most importantly, our fishermen. When I was in the Senate, I fought very hard for our fishermen when the federal government tried to basically crush them with regulations from Washington. And we should not be doing that with wind, by the way, paid for by taxpayer dollars that does not going to have the return on investment. Right. And I would argue, if you look at the whole thing, I doubt that it's even green in the end.
So starting with you, Senator Morse, back to our regular questions. It's fascinating to me that in New Hampshire, the green eye shade capital of Republican politics for so long, where it was fiscal talk and Republicans were told, be a fiscal conservative and a social moderate, there's almost no talk about taxes. Is that because you believe that the tax rates we have in New Hampshire are about right, that we've had the business tax cuts we can have, obviously the interest and deductions, dividends taxes being phased out? Or is there more room for more tax cuts, and if so, where? We'll start with you, 1 minute.
Well, let me just say, you know, when I grew up with a Governor Mel Thompson, and his slogan of axe to tax, you know, basically lower taxes as a result of lower spending. That's what I did. I did that as Senate President. In 2021, we created the most conservative budget in the state's history. We lowered the business taxes. We eliminated the interest and dividends tax. And that's something a governor is going to have to face in 2025 when they build the budget. And we sent $500 million back to the property taxpayers in New Hampshire. I believe that's how you have to govern, and I always believe you have to explore the taxes that are being charged, because if you can drive down taxes, you'll let people keep more of their money, and they'll drive an economy.
I fully support low taxes as a result of low spending, and I'm honored to have the support of Tom Thompson, Mel Thompson's son, in this race. When I look at our tax situation, I think we always need to keep an eye, in particular, what is happening at the local level too, because I got to tell you, people in the state keep telling me they're paying too high on the property tax front. So I know the legislature has taken steps to return money to the local, whether it's through the rooms and meals tax. So I think we should always be looking ways to do that. In addition to that, we got to make sure our business rate remains competitive. Because if it's not, we'll lose businesses in the state. So we should always keep an eye on that, because if it's not competitive, not just with New England, but by the way, other states throughout the country, then we're not going to allow our small businesses to thrive and grow. And I do think it's important we phase out and continue to phase out the interest and dividends tax.
Thank you. Senator Ayotte, education freedom accounts in New Hampshire are constantly under attack, and critics have said it's not doing anything except sending money to families who already have their kids in private schools and already have the means to pay for it. Do you support the Education Freedom Account program, and would you support expanding it?
First of all, I think the education freedom accounts are very important. I think every child learns differently, and that we really should empower parents with the state dollars to decide what's the best venue for my child. I had the privilege of the last 5 years serving on the St. Christopher Academy School Board, and I saw parents that were able to come to our school otherwise. We try to keep tuition low by using those education freedom accounts. And that was best for their child, especially when the public schools were shut down. That was so important. My husband teaches at that Catholic school. He teaches math. I really believe that we should be expanding education freedom for people in New Hampshire, because states that have done that have actually improved their education system overall, and making sure that every child can reach his or her full potential.
I believe in education freedom accounts. I put those in the 2021 budget because I wanted children to have choice. Unlike my opponent when she was a U.S. Senator, she voted against education choice for low-income families. You know, in New Hampshire, we are doing it right. Our public education is rated one of the tops in the nation. But yet, when we look at it, the fact is, in the last 15 years, we're down about 11% in students. But we're up in bureaucracy of almost 50%, actually a little bit more. We can do better in our state. We can make sure that we take education freedom accounts and expand them to every child in our state. I believe that's what's going to make a better public education system, and I'll continue to make it better.
So, Senator Morse, given the disparity between what's happening with per pupil expenditures, as you noted, that they've declined, enrollment's declined, spending has gone up, and yet local property taxpayers are still seeing the same or higher pressure. Would you support a state funding system that punished communities that had continuing per pupil increases and rewarded communities that kept per pupil spending based, flat or falling? Is it time for the state to put pressure on school systems if they continue to spend the local tax property money, or is that beyond the line between where the state should go and where the community should go?
No, what I believe should happen in New Hampshire is, remember, New Hampshire spends more than $4,000 more than the national average per pupil in our state. It's not a funding problem in our state. We need to make sure that we're creating an education system that works for every child in our state. And I think that's what I've started to accomplish. You know, there's over 10,000 kids in charter schools and education freedom accounts now. That's working for our state. We need to make it work even more. And we can work alongside the public education system, and we can make it stronger. Let's take it to #1 in the nation. We can do that.
I owe you
Michael,
30
I was
seconds
gonna say,
because
I need-
everybody at the table told me, hey, idiot, she gets 30 seconds to rebut. I didn't give it to you. So you have
Yeah,
30
I
seconds
really-
and more,
I
a
just
minute.
wanted a chance to address the baloney about my record on education freedom. First of all, Chuck Morse voted against education freedom accounts in 2004. He joined with the Democrats to do that. We could have had it in place for the last 16 years if he had had the spine to do it at that time. But also, on that same bill that he's citing, I voted for an amendment by Senator Tim Scott. There was a better amendment that allowed Title I funding to follow the child and allowed that funding to be used by private schools or whatever venue is best for that child. So I just want to make sure that people understand that. There was the same bill, and there was just a better amendment by Tim Scott, which I was proud to support, and it supports education choice.
You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, let's be clear. She voted against education choice for low-income families. She can't deny that. I made sure in 2021 that we passed it. We passed it in that budget in 2021. We created education freedom accounts in New Hampshire. I'm going to work as governor to make sure every child gets to take advantage of education freedom accounts.
I guess I'm wondering why he didn't get it done in 2004 when he joined with Democrats to kill it. So we would have had that in place here in New Hampshire. But listen, I'm married to a teacher who teaches math at the Catholic school. I've served on our school board. I've seen education freedom accounts in operation and how important they are for parents in New Hampshire, and I will fight for them.
One last.
Well, let me be clear, and I'll switch the subject. She was the chief law enforcement person in our state. when these kids were being raped and brutalized in the Sununu Center in 2005, 6, 7. That's when she was there. She was the chief law enforcement officer. So if she wants to talk about failures of what she hasn't accomplished, let's talk about that.
30 seconds.
This is what's so sad about Chuck Morris in this campaign, that he'll say or do anything. We were actually at a forum on June 21st in Chester when Frank Staples raised this conspiracy theory, and Chuck answered it himself and said, no one knew it at the time. But by the way, I'm the former prosecutor up here. I held the Catholic Church accountable. I prosecuted my second murder case was the rape and murder of a 6-year-old little girl. So making sure that children are protected has always been my priority.
Okay, so now let's have some fun questions. I have some lightning round things to kind of lighten the mood. I guess it's the perfect time for them. What do you say? So starting with you, Senator Ayotte. Someone comes to you and says, I'm thinking about running for office. I may want to become a politician. What's the one movie or TV show you'd recommend they watch before they take that decision? 30 seconds.
Game of Thrones?
How about you, Senator Morse? What's your one recommendation?
Rocky, I'm always supporting the underdog.
Okay. And you're up, Evan?
One more. A friend says, I'm going to come to New Hampshire for one day in the coming year, and I'm only going to have time to do one thing. What should I do, Senator Morse?
Yeah, I think you should go to the White Mountains and go skiing.
All right. Senator Ayotte.
I think you should go to the summit of Mount Washington.
All right.
Those are all
Yeah.
excellent answers. Okay, so since we're talking about state government things, one of the criticisms of Governor Chris Sununu, commonly heard from Republican lawmakers, not you, of course, Senator Morse, is that he was less than entirely a team player sometimes, that there was not a lot of conversation, a lot of coordination, sometimes there would be surprises. There are about 400-ish Republicans right now running for State House and the Senate, et cetera. Why are you the best candidate to work with them in Concord? You have 1 minute.
Yeah, in all the years that I've served the state, and I was a volunteer, by the way, I made sure that I worked together with everyone. I worked well with Governor Sununu. We created tax policy that's working for the state of New Hampshire. We drove an economy and made us the most livable state in the nation. That's what we need to continue to do, and I will do that as governor because my vision of this state is to go beyond where Governor Sununu was. You know, let's increase school choice in our state. Let's make us a stronger state by doing that. Let's continue to look at cutting taxes because it's worked for our state. It's helped drive the economy. People want to be here. That's what I'm going to do as governor.
Senator Ayotte, you don't have State House experience as far as being a member of the legislature. Why are you the right governor to work with these legislators in 2025?
Well, actually, I did a brief stint as legal counsel for Governor Benson and worked a lot with the legislature then. And as Attorney General, I had to work a lot with the legislature. But I was proud in 2020 to help the legislature then take back the House majority. Then Speaker Dick Hinch, God rest his soul, asked me to help him, and I raised a lot of money to help the House with that majority. And we have great House members. I'm proud to have a number of their endorsements. And so I do really think it's important that we work together because, yes, you can have the governor, but you need a strong state House. And we need a bigger majority in the House of Representatives because some of the things that we're talking about tonight, like the Parental Bill of Rights, if we don't grow our majority, we're not going to get it done. Or expanding education freedom. So many issues, it's critical. So I plan, if I have the privilege of being our nominee, and as governor, I'm going to work with the House and the Senate to expand our majority so we can get things done for the people of New Hampshire.
Right. Senator Ayotte, Democrats have made it clear that abortion is going to be their top issue in November, and some Republicans are fearing that this issue, could be enough to give them some big wins, even here in New Hampshire especially. Why are you the best candidate to represent Republicans on the abortion issue?
Well, I'm actually already taking this fight to the Democrats because they are misleading women in this state. They have misrepresented our law. The Supreme Court turned this issue back to the states, and New Hampshire passed a law that gives women the freedom to obtain an abortion during the first 6 months of pregnancy. And they keep telling women that there's a ban in place. So I already have ads on TV explaining what our law is, because they are trying to mislead people in New Hampshire. I'm not going to let them do that because it's not right and it's frankly dangerous.
Senator Morse?
Let me be clear about what we did in New Hampshire. We did not ban abortion. You know, I worked compassionately with my wife, my daughter, the women senators, to make sure that when we passed a law that allowed mothers to deal with their doctors and their families in the first 6 months. And then in the 7th, 8th, and 9th month, the 3rd trimester, we banned partial birth abortion. We protected the mother's life. I voted for it then, and I'd vote for it now.
So speaking of other gender and sex-related issues, Governor Sununu signed a bill that says biological males cannot compete in girls' sports teams between the 5th and 12th grades. But he vetoed a bill that would have clearly given schools and other facilities the authority, or clarified their authority, I should say, to keep bathrooms and locker rooms single-sex. Senator Morse, would you have handled these bills the same way Governor Sununu did? And if not, what would you have done?
Let me be clear. I accomplished a lot working with Governor Sununu. You know, we created this pro-jobs, pro-growth, family-first agenda in our state. We're the most livable state in the nation. But I have a daughter. I have a daughter that played sports, you know, and when she played on those 2 teams that she played basketball on and field hockey, I can't imagine any parent out there that would want a male going into a locker room where your daughter was showering. I would certainly make sure that we pass legislation that says males are not allowed in locker rooms and bathrooms and prisons. It's wrong for the state of New Hampshire. I wouldn't let it happen.
Michael, first of all, my daughter was, and our daughter, Joe's here too, was a 3-sport athlete. She won 3 state championships in soccer, basketball, lacrosse. So protecting women's sports is critical. And I think we're going to still have to protect it because they're already challenging this law that was passed. And so I will be fighting that with everything that we have. In addition, I support that local authorities should have the authority to address the accompanying issue of locker rooms and other facilities to make sure that we protect people's privacy, that women feel safe, and that they're accommodating. In addition to that, having been a former attorney general, I don't understand this idea. We should be giving prison officials the authority to make sure that men can't be in women's prisons because it's a dangerous situation and women inmates should be safe.
And thanks to a former state representative who's a Democrat, it's not hypothetical. We actually have had that situation
exactly.
here in New
We've
Hampshire.
had that arise,
I have a 30-second follow-up, and we'll start with you, Senator Morse. One of the arguments that's made from the people who advocate allowing the students who identify as male to compete with girls, they say that it's either mean-spirited, you're picking on these kids who are going through something sincere, or you're a bigot. So you're at an event and you're talking about this and someone makes that argument to you. 30 seconds, what would your response be to a voter who felt that way?
Yeah, I care. I have a daughter. I believe every parent would look at it the same way I look at it. You know, I want to protect my daughter. She was playing sports. I don't want a boy in her locker room while she's changing or showering, and I would be very calm about it. It's just not right. Men are men, women are women.
This is a matter of fairness, too. We fought so long for women under Title IX, for women's sports, and for women to have an opportunity to compete, and it's really just not fair. But in addition to that, you know, a lot of schools have co-ed sports. I know that where my son goes to school, they have some co-ed sports, too. So there are other opportunities for people to participate, but it is not fair to have biological men participating in women's sports. And it's not safe, but most importantly, women deserve to have their championships. They deserve to win their games and be the best at their sport.
Okay. Senator Morse, Republicans say they have serious concerns about ballot security. They worry that illegal immigrants and out-of-state residents, Massachusetts residents, are voting in New Hampshire elections. Some Republicans' campaigns, pros even say election concerns are even keeping some Republicans from voting because they're worried that they don't vote doesn't matter. What's your view of the state's election process? And what would you say to any Granite Stater who's considering staying home because they don't believe their vote will count?
Well, I want to guarantee them that their vote does count. That's what New Hampshire is all about. You know, we need to make sure we elect Republicans in the House and in the Senate and pass laws that make sure we have security on our voting. You should have to have an ID when you go to vote. That's what New Hampshire's all about. You know, on this campaign trail, as I've traveled throughout the state of New Hampshire, the voters out there are talking with us and they're explaining some of the flaws that they see in the system. We can do better as a state. We can make sure that we secure our voting system in this state by bringing everybody to the table and solving the problem. We haven't done that, and we need to do it.
Okay.
I think it's important that everyone knows that their vote counts. And when I think about issues in New Hampshire, the most important thing is that I think people should have to show ID. They have to show they live here, that you're a resident of this state, and you know that you are entitled to vote, meaning you're a citizen, that you're here, and this is so important. So everyone's vote counts. But I know how close our elections can be, so I know every vote counts, and it's really important that everyone get out to vote and that they don't feel discouraged, because your vote matters in New Hampshire, and I think every candidate should be talking about that.
Senator Ayotte, what is one thing that Governor Sununu did as governor that you think was great, and one thing he did that you would not have done?
Well, I think, first of all, he's the one that has, when the Democrats were in charge, he vetoed all those bills, including an income tax, so he protected the New Hampshire advantage. I thought that was great. He also signed the education freedom accounts and all the good things that have happened that the legislature has done, which is great. You know, there are some things that I think I would have done differently, like redistricting. The legislature worked really hard on that, and I know that he ended up vetoing that. I think that really that he should have worked more with the legislature on that piece. We also have some challenges when it comes to law enforcement and Group 2 retirement, because we're down 64 troopers. And I think we need to partner more on that issue, because we can't be down 64 troopers, 50% of our corrections officers, 20 officers in Manchester, 20 officers in Nashua, and that's an issue we need to work further on.
Senator Morse?
Well, I think Governor Sununu working together with the Senate and the House and cutting taxes has driven this economy. I think that's what's working. That's why things are so special right now. We need to keep that going. But I do think there's some differences between myself and Chris. First of all, we shouldn't have closed the state during COVID. I've heard that time and time again on the campaign trail, that we shouldn't have done that. We hurt ourselves as a state. And what we just talked about, I think, is equally important. We shouldn't be having men in women's bathrooms or women's locker rooms. And as you talked about the prison concept, the public should know what's going on there. I mean, I talked with Riley Gaines when she was here, and the important part of what she was saying is the prisoners were calling her from the women's prison and saying, you know, if men declare they want to be in our prison, they're going to come in here, rapists, pedophiles. That's wrong. So we need to fix that.
Senator Morse, one of the only reasons we haven't seen many college protests about Israel and Gaza lately is because college is out. College is back in session. This past spring, there were uprisings in University of New Hampshire and in Hanover, and in each case, police did a notable job in terms of not making us look like other places, like Massachusetts or New York City. What steps do you think they did the right things over this past spring, and would there be anything that you would want to say to these students if you got to talk to them and one-on-one about this conflict?
Yeah, you have the right to protest, but peacefully and lawfully. And if something were to go outside the law, or if the universities were to be calling me as governor, I'd make sure that New Hampshire law enforcement responded. Governor Sununu did a great job during that time period. Sending law enforcement to the university system and just stopping it is exactly what he needed to do. And that's how I'd be as governor.
I would like to tell these students to do their homework. Hamas, they're terrorists. The things they purport to stand for, whether it's women's rights or LGBTQ rights, like Hamas is against all of that because they're terrorists, and they do not share any of the values that these young people say that they share. So please do your homework, learn history, understand what's happening in the world. And then you have a right to protest, and there were men and women who died for that right. But respect other people's rights to go to school, to get an education. They are there too, and that is part of how exercising your right is respecting other people's rights.
Senator Ayotte, well, you obviously are voters and citizens too. You're watching the campaigning from the Democratic side for all the various offices, president, Congress. What is the thing that you hear from Democrats that drives you the most crazy and makes you yell at your screen?
Oh, what drives me crazy is that they're somehow trying to claim the mantra of freedom. When they believe freedom means more government and less individual decision-making. I don't buy that at all. I believe that individuals and families should make the best decisions for themselves, that government shouldn't be telling us what to do, but they have a completely different definition of freedom, and they're misleading the American people by trying to say that they are the party of freedom. We are the party of freedom. We'll protect your constitutional rights, freedom for parents, education freedom, and we need to really make sure that we get that and not let them mislead or lie to the American people about that.
Senator Morse.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious right now that the differences between the Republican Party and the Democrat Party need to be spelled out. Let's spell out that President Biden has taken this country in the wrong direction. Inflation is skyrocketing. It's hurting our seniors. He's gone and made sure that interest rates have gone to the moon because of what he's done with inflation, and now housing's not even affordable to our young people. I really think their solutions to fix it, like price controls, are totally wrong for this country and wrong for the state of New Hampshire. We can grow an economy in New Hampshire if we elect Republicans in the House and we elect Republicans in the Senate and a Republican governor.
So since the arrival of Donald Trump, the coalitions for the two parties have changed nationally, and you're seeing it somewhat here in New Hampshire as well, where you've got, as we mentioned earlier, suburban affluent communities like Bedford moving from red Republican more blue, and then you've got blue communities like Rochester and even Berlin suddenly electing Republicans. Senator Morse, what would you say to these blue-collar working-class voters who have been Democrats in the past, who are now looking at the Republican Party, thanks in part to Donald Trump in a new way, to make the case that you and the Republican Party are the right place for their votes? How is a Chuck Morse governor the right governor for these blue-collar workers and working-class families?
Yeah, I believe all the citizens in New Hampshire are looking for leadership. And they're not going to get it out of a Joyce Craig or a Cindy Wilmington. They're looking for leadership to drive an economy and make it safe in our state. That's exactly what I did as Senate President, and that's what I'll do as governor. We have a great opportunity here to help people. We can elect Donald Trump this November 5th by uniting the Republican Party here in New Hampshire. And we can make sure that we turn this economy around. Remember the gas prices? They were under $2. Remember the interest rates? I mean, we can do it. We can unite the Republican Party under the leadership of Donald Trump, and that's what I'm going to do.
Well, I would tell them, first of all, if you want to drive a pickup truck, please drive it. We're not going to force you to drive electric vehicles. We want to make life more affordable for you. We're not going to pass on more tax burdens to you like the Democrats or tell you how to live your life. We want to support you as a parent and let you make your own decisions for your children. The Democrats, I think, when the hardworking people in this country, they really stand for the opposite, because those people are working very hard every day. They want life to be more affordable, not adding costs, not adding taxes. And they want to be able to pay for their energy bill, right? But the Democrats just want to add more burdens on it. Both Cindy Wilmington and Joyce Craig are to drive up our energy costs. How does that help working people? I think we have a strong case to make to working people. President Trump has made that case. We need to make that case in New Hampshire because there's a huge contrast between the parties.
Well, we have one more question, then we're going to go to your 2-minute final comments. We'd saved the tough for last, so please don't hate anybody. I was forced to ask this at gunpoint. No, I'm kidding. But these, in all seriousness, these are questions we're getting from our readers. And the first one is for you, Senator Ayotte, and the second one's for you, Senator Morse. These are separate questions. The number one concern that Republican voters have expressed about your candidacy is that they remember 2016, you couldn't keep the coalition together. They're afraid that they support you, that sure, some moderates might like you, but you're going to lose the base and you're going to lose the governor's office. What is your 1-minute response to people who have those concerns about why they should still back you?
When President Trump got elected, I wanted him to succeed. And the Trump administration asked me to help the administration get Justice Gorsuch, the first justice on the Supreme Court, and I was proud to do that. I appreciate the work that was done in his presidency, and we need him back in office again. But I built a broad coalition in this campaign. I have leaders from the Trump campaign. I have all sectors of the party who are supporting me in this campaign. And that's what we're going to bring on September 10th and bring that into November, because we need to be united as a party. And by the way, in New Hampshire, we need to be united, because make no mistake, we are one election away from becoming Massachusetts if Cindy Warmington or Joyce Craig is our governor. So we need to win in November. The costs are very high for this state, and I have what it takes and the fire in the belly to beat these women and make sure that we protect the live free or die New Hampshire that we love.
Senator Morse, the most common concern that people express about your candidacy is they see the polls and the fundraising, and they say, everyone loves Chuck Morse, great guy, but this just isn't going to happen for him. What would you say to people who are thinking about how to vote and why you have a path forward in this primary?
You know, when I started this campaign, I set goals, I made them. And I said, this is how we're going to run our campaign in this state. And I'm not going to be bought by outsiders. I thought that we had to run a campaign that was grassroots, that went out to every community 2 and 3 times. I've done that. And I've listened to the people in New Hampshire. And I've certainly heard them say, there's a big difference in this race. I worked to make sure that we passed that budget in 2016, and I worked with Democrats and Republicans to get it passed over Governor Hassan at the time. Kelly couldn't unite the Republican Party at the time. She did just the opposite. She went against us in November, and she lost the U.S. Senate seat. That's the difference I hear on the campaign trail. I will unite the Republican Party.
So you have 30 seconds to rebut, but then again, it's also time for final comments. So you can choose to rebut, or you can just go ahead and give your 2-minute close, whichever you prefer.
Well, listen, I've already addressed it from a guy who's never even won a statewide election. I find it rich. But I am very honored to be here. I thank New Hampshire Journal for having this debate. It's an important debate. But make no mistake, the Democrats are already spending millions of dollars on TV against me. The reason they are doing that is because this is the top state in the nation that they believe they can flip from red to blue. Not going to let them do it. And they see me as the biggest threat to their agenda. An agenda that would take New Hampshire in such a different direction, to the billion-dollar illegal immigrant crisis that we see in Massachusetts, to higher taxes and less freedom. That is what is at stake in this election. And we cannot, I think, ask yourself this question: can we leave this to someone who really has not done it before and hasn't made it happen? I will make this happen. I'll unite the Republican Party. We'll convince independents, because you know what? We have the right model. Lower taxes, more freedom, protecting parents' rights, giving parents the freedom to decide what is best for their child and what's the best education venue that they should be in. But Joyce Craig and Cindy Warmington, they have such a different vision. I have the fire in the belly to beat them. I will beat them in November, but I ask for your support on September 10th. We'll unite the Republican Party and make sure that we win and keep New Hampshire the great state that it is. We'll build on the successes of Governor Sununu and protect this great live free or die state.
Senator Morse, 2 minutes.
Well, New Hampshire is the most livable state in the nation. It didn't happen by accident, and it didn't happen by luck. It happened by electing conservatives. I did that as Senate President, and I'll do that as governor. But you know, as we get into this fall. We need to unite the Republican Party. And I don't believe that the Republican Party is going to unite behind someone that went to Washington and voted with the Democrats over 260 times and voted to give amnesty to 11 million illegal immigrants. Let me be clear on that. She voted to give amnesty to 11 million illegal immigrants. And she did vote against school choice for low-income families. And I really don't see on her record of 2016 and 20 where she supported President Trump. I will work to make sure that we balance a budget, ban sanctuary cities, make sure we keep the drug dealers from dealing in our state and treat them like the murderers they are. And we'll certainly strengthen parental rights. I ask for your vote tonight, and I'm honored to speak before you tonight, and I hope I've earned it. Thank you.
And let's have a round of applause for both of our candidates, Senator Ayotte and Senator Morse. I also want to say thank you to the New Hampshire Institute of Politics for making this possible, for Manchester Public Television for broadcasting this, for the great job that Evan Lips and Jessica Sternberg did up here. My mediocre job was covered by them. Thank you all for being part of this conversation.